Marriage is supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where two people build something permanent together, brick by brick, promise by promise. For 15 years, I believed in that sanctuary. I believed in the vows we'd made, the life we'd constructed, the family we'd created. My name is Daniel Foster, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was. A devoted husband, a dedicated father to two incredible kids, and a man who'd done everything right. I worked hard as a senior project manager at a civil engineering firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I provided for my family. I showed up. I was present. I thought that mattered. My wife, Jessica, had been my college sweetheart. We met at UNC Chapel Hill during our junior year. She was studying communications, and I was buried in engineering coursework. She had this infectious laugh that could light up a room, and an optimism that balanced out my more analytical nature. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. After graduation, we married young at 23, probably too young by today's standards, but we were in love and impatient to start our lives together. The first decade was genuinely happy. We had our daughter Emily when Jessica was 25, and our son Tyler 2 years later. Jessica had worked in marketing for a few years but decided to stay home with the kids, a decision we made together after running the numbers and realizing daycare costs would eat up most of her salary anyway. I supported that choice completely. I wanted our kids to have a parent at home, and Jessica seemed fulfilled by it, at least for a while. Looking back now with the cruel clarity that only betrayal provides, I can see the hairline fractures that appeared around our 12th year of marriage. Jessica started going to the gym more frequently. She joined a book club. She took up yoga. At the time, I encouraged all of it. I thought she was finding herself again after years of being just mom. I was proud of her for prioritizing her own interests. What kind of husband would begrudge his wife personal growth? The changes were gradual enough that I didn't register them as warning signs. She started dressing differently, more fashionable, more attention to makeup and hair. She was on her phone constantly, but then again, wasn't everyone these days? She seemed distracted during conversations, but we'd been married long enough that I chalked it up to the comfortable silence of long-term partnership. She initiated intimacy less frequently, but we had 2 kids, demanding jobs and responsibilities. That was normal, right? Every marriage goes through phases. I was a fool. The discovery came on a Tuesday evening in late September, unremarkable in every way except that it was the day my entire world collapsed. Jessica had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, something she never did, while she ran to pick up Tyler from soccer practice. Emily was upstairs doing homework. I'd come home early from a site inspection that had been canceled due to weather, and I was simply going to close the laptop to move it somewhere safe when I saw the message notification pop up on the screen. The preview was enough. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. Last night was incredible. My heart stopped. Actually stopped for what felt like several seconds before hammering back to life with such force I could hear it in my ears. The message was from someone named Kevin Wright, a name I'd heard before. He was a personal trainer at Jessica's gym. She'd mentioned him casually over the past 6 months. Kevin showed me a new core routine, or Kevin says I'm making great progress. I'd pictured some meathead gym bro, never thinking twice about it. I stood in our kitchen, staring at that laptop screen, as autumn sunlight streamed through the windows and illuminated the granite countertops we'd picked out together 3 years ago during our kitchen renovation. Everything looked exactly the same as it had that morning. The family calendar on the refrigerator with Emily's orthodontist appointment marked in Jessica's neat handwriting, Tyler's cleats drying by the back door, the coffee mug I'd used that morning still sitting in the sink. But nothing would ever be the same again. My hands trembled as I reached for the laptop. I knew I shouldn't look. Some part of my brain screamed that once I crossed this threshold, there would be no going back to the blissful ignorance I'd inhabited just 60 seconds earlier. But that message preview had already shattered the illusion. The only question now was how deep the betrayal went. I clicked on the messaging app. Some platform I didn't even recognize, not the standard text messages that would show on her phone bill. She'd been careful about that, apparently. The conversation history loaded, and I felt physically ill as I scrolled through weeks of messages. Months, actually. The affair had been going on since at least May, maybe longer. The messages were explicit in a way that made me want to vomit. This wasn't some emotional affair or workplace flirtation that had gotten out of hand. This was calculated, ongoing, physical betrayal. They discussed meeting times with the precision of people coordinating business meetings. They shared intimate details about their encounters, in his apartment, in her car, once even in our home while I was on a business trip to Raleigh and the kids were at school. Our home. Our bed. I sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs, still reading, unable to stop myself despite the way each message felt like a knife to the chest. Jessica wasn't just cheating. She was a completely different person in these messages, passionate, spontaneous, adventurous in ways she'd never been with me, at least not in recent years. She sent photos I'd never seen, wore lingerie I didn't know she owned. The kitchen clock read 7:47 p.m. when I finally moved from my position at the counter. My legs had gone stiff, my coffee stone cold in its mug. The laptop screen had dimmed to conserve battery, mercifully hiding those messages from view, but they were seared into my memory now. Every word. Every casual reference to my business trips, my schedule, my obliviousness. I needed to think, to plan. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. Jessica worked at Presbyterian Hospital's main pharmacy. She'd taken the position 18 months ago after Emily started middle school, and Tyler's soccer schedule became more demanding. "I need something for myself," she'd said. "Something that uses my brain again." The hospital had hired her as a pharmacy technician after she completed a certification program. 8 months of evening classes while I handled dinner and homework duty. I'd been proud of her, encouraged her, drove her to the testing center myself. Now, standing in our kitchen with the evidence of her affair still glowing on that laptop, a different possibility began forming in my mind. One that made my stomach turn. I reopened the laptop and started searching through her files more systematically. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, just that the nervous energy coursing through me needed direction. Her documents folder contained the expected things: PTA meeting notes, Emily's orthodontist records, our tax returns from previous years. But there was a subfolder labeled Work Pharmacy that I'd initially skipped over. Inside were dozens of spreadsheets, patient medication lists, inventory logs. Nothing unusual at first glance. Jessica often brought work home, claimed she needed to review dispensing records or double-check orders. The hospital's compliance requirements were strict, she'd explained. I'd never questioned it. But one file stood out. It was labeled Personal Reconciliation and dated from 3 weeks ago. I opened it. The spreadsheet contained medication names I recognized: OxyContin, Percocet, Adderall, Xanax. controlled substances. Next to each was a series of numbers, quantities, dates, and what appeared to be prices. My engineering training kicked in automatically, analyzing the pattern. The dates corresponded to Jessica's work shifts. The quantities were small enough to avoid immediate detection but added up to significant amounts over time. And the prices? The prices were street values. I sat back down, my hands trembling as I scrolled through row after row of data. This wasn't just an affair, this was something far worse. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Running late, book club going long, don't wait up for me." Book club. Right. I didn't respond. I forced myself to keep searching. In her email, she'd stayed logged in, another gift of carelessness. I found correspondence with someone named Derek Paulson. The messages were carefully worded, nothing explicitly incriminating, but the pattern was clear. The usual order ready for Friday pickup. Inventory adjustment complete as discussed. Payment received. Thanks. Derek Paulson. I pulled up a search engine and typed in his name along with pharmacy and Charlotte. The results made my blood run cold. Derek Paulson had been a licensed pharmacist until 3 years ago when the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy revoked his license for unprofessional conduct and violations of controlled substance regulations. A deeper search revealed he'd been running an illegal online pharmacy, selling prescription medications without valid prescriptions. He'd avoided jail time through a plea deal, but was permanently barred from working in any legitimate pharmacy. I found his current operation easily enough. A website with a generic name that promised affordable medications delivered discreetly to your door. No prescription required. Just click, pay, and wait for your package. Jessica was stealing medications from the hospital pharmacy and selling them to her ex-pharmacist boyfriend who was running an illegal operation. And based on the spreadsheet dates, this had been going on for at least 6 months. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was committing federal crimes, drug trafficking, theft from a hospital, diversion of controlled substances meant for patients who actually needed them. I thought about the cancer patient I'd met in the hospital lobby last month when I'd picked Jessica up after her car wouldn't start. An older woman, frail and obviously in pain, waiting for her prescription to be filled. Had she gone without because Jessica had stolen her medication? Had some chronic pain patient suffered through sleepless nights because my wife had diverted their OxyContin to sell online? The affair with Kevin suddenly seemed almost trivial by comparison. Though, as I dug further through her messages, I realized Kevin wasn't just her personal trainer. He was her courier. "Kay will pick up the package on Thursday," appeared repeatedly in her exchanges with Derek. Kay confirms delivery complete. Kevin Wright, personal trainer and drug runner. The man my wife had been sleeping with in our bed was also helping her traffic stolen pharmaceuticals. I heard a car door slam outside. Jessica's SUV in the driveway, right on schedule despite her text about running late. She'd probably sent that message from the gym parking lot or wherever she'd actually been. I had maybe 30 seconds before she walked through the door. My analytical mind kicked into overdrive. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more evidence, documentation that couldn't be denied or destroyed. I needed to understand the full scope of this operation before I made any moves. I closed the laptop carefully, leaving everything exactly as I'd found it. Grabbed my cold coffee and dumped it in the sink. Pulled out my phone and opened a random news article, trying to look casual. The front door opened. Jessica's voice called out, "I'm home. Sorry it's so late. You know how Brenda gets when she starts talking about her book choices?" Brenda, the book club president who, according to Jessica's calendar, had been in Florida for the past week visiting her daughter. I walked into the hallway. Jessica stood there in her yoga pants and fitted jacket, gym bag over her shoulder, looking exactly like the woman I'd married 15 years ago. Except now I could see the performance of it, the calculated normalcy, the practiced smile. "How was it?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Oh, same old discussions about whether we're reading too much literary fiction." She set her bag down, kissed my cheek, a quick, perfunctory gesture. "Have the kids finished their homework?" "Emily's still working on her history project. Tyler finished an hour ago." The lies came easily to both of us, apparently. "I'm heading to bed early. Long day tomorrow." She looked relieved. "Okay, I need to catch up on some work emails anyway. Sleep well." I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my mind racing. Tomorrow I would start documenting everything. Screenshot every file, every email, every message. I'd figure out exactly how much she'd stolen, how many patients had been affected, how deep this conspiracy went. And then I'd decide what to do with that information. Because this wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. This was about people suffering without their medications, about federal crimes, about a hospital that had trusted my wife and patients who had depended on her. I lay in our bed, the same bed where she'd brought Kevin while I was in Raleigh, and stared at the ceiling. Jessica's laptop was still downstairs, full of evidence she didn't know I'd found. Tomorrow she'd go to work, steal more medications, meet with Derek or Kevin or whoever else was involved in this scheme. And I would be watching, documenting, building a case. The affair had destroyed my marriage. But the theft? That was going to destroy everything else. I sat at my desk in the study until nearly 2 in the morning, my laptop screen casting a pale glow across the darkened room. The house had settled into silence hours ago. Jessica's breathing had evened out in our bedroom down the hall, the children long since asleep in their rooms. Every few minutes, I'd pause and listen, making sure no one was stirring. The flash drive I'd purchased at the 24-hour CVS sat plugged into my laptop's USB port, its tiny LED blinking as I methodically copied files. Jessica's spreadsheet. Screenshots of her message exchanges with Kevin. Photos I'd taken with my phone of the physical evidence hidden in our basement. I organized everything into folders, labeled with dates and descriptions. My engineering training had taught me the value of documentation, of building a case brick by methodical brick. But what kind of case was I building? And for whom? The question had gnawed at me since I'd sent Jessica upstairs with her glass of water and her elaborate fiction about book club. I'd smiled and kissed her forehead, playing the devoted husband while my mind raced through possibilities. Each option carried consequences that rippled outward like cracks in concrete, affecting not just Jessica and me, but Emily, Tyler, the patients whose medications had been stolen, the hospital, everyone connected to this expanding circle of damage. I could confront Jessica directly, demand answers, give her a chance to explain, though what explanation could possibly justify what I'd discovered? The affair was one thing, a betrayal that had already shattered something fundamental between us. But the drug theft? The deliberate diversion of controlled substances from people who needed them, cancer patients and post-surgical patients and people in genuine pain, also Jessica could fund. What exactly? Her affair? Some lifestyle I hadn't noticed? The spreadsheet showed deposits totaling nearly $40,000 over 6 months. Where had that money gone? I opened our joint bank account, studying the transaction history with fresh eyes. Nothing unusual appeared in our checking or savings. Our credit cards showed normal spending: groceries, gas, the kids' activities, household expenses. Jessica hadn't been depositing her illegal income into our accounts, which meant she had money hidden somewhere. Another account I didn't know about. Cash stashed in the house, perhaps alongside the stolen medications. The thought made my skin crawl. How thoroughly had I searched the basement? What else might be hidden in my own home? I glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. In a few hours, I'd need to be awake for work, presenting a normal face to the world while this knowledge burned inside me. Jessica would wake up, shower, eat breakfast with the kids, kiss me goodbye before heading to the hospital where she'd spend another day stealing from vulnerable patients. Unless I stopped her. The DEA's website was still open in another browser tab, the anonymous tip line number displayed prominently. I'd found it an hour ago, read through the information about reporting pharmaceutical theft and diversion. They took these cases seriously, the site explained. Controlled substances diverted from legitimate medical use represented a significant public health threat. Federal drug trafficking charges. Prison time measured in years, not months. My wife could go to federal prison. The mother of my children could become a convicted felon. And I would be the one who put her there. My hand hovered over the mouse, cursor blinking in the empty text field of an email I'd started and deleted 3 times. Each time I'd gotten as far as, "I have information about pharmaceutical theft at Presbyterian Hospital," before the weight of what I was about to do stopped me cold. This wasn't just about Jessica anymore. Derek Paulson, the pharmacist whose license had been revoked. He was clearly the ringleader, the one running the illegal online pharmacy. Kevin Wright was the courier, the muscle, probably getting paid for his role in the distribution network. But Jessica was the source, the inside person who made the whole operation possible. Without her access to the hospital pharmacy, the entire scheme collapsed. How many others were involved? The operation seemed too sophisticated for just 3 people. Someone had to be covering for Jessica at work, falsifying inventory records, creating the fake prescriptions. Someone had to be handling the online orders, shipping the medications, managing the customer base that Derek had built. I needed more information before I made any irreversible decisions. The thought steadied me, gave me a concrete next step. I closed the DEA website and opened a new document, beginning to outline what I knew and what I still needed to discover. Facts in one column, questions in another, the kind of systematic analysis I'd use for any complex engineering problem. Except this wasn't a bridge design or a structural assessment. This was my life, my family, my marriage, whatever remained of it. I worked until my eyes burned and my neck ached from hunching over the keyboard. The flash drive held copies of everything, and I'd backed those files up to a secure cloud storage account Jessica didn't know existed. Evidence preserved, documented, time-stamped. Whatever happened next, I had proof of what I'd found, and when I'd found it. At 3:30 a.m., I finally shut down the laptop and sat in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of my house. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the heat clicking on, warm air whispering through the vents. Outside, a car passed on our quiet street, headlights briefly sweeping across the study window. Normal sounds. Normal life continuing around the crater that had opened up beneath my feet. I thought about Emily, 13 years old and worried about her orthodontist appointment, about fitting in at school and whether her friends really liked her. I thought about Tyler, 11 and obsessed with soccer, still young enough to think his parents were infallible, that the world made sense and followed rules. What would this do to them? The question had no good answer. If I reported Jessica, if she faced federal charges and went to prison, my children would grow up with a mother who was a convicted felon, a drug trafficker. They'd face the stigma, the questions, the knowledge that their mom had stolen medications from sick people to sell on the black market. But if I said nothing, if I let this continue, what did that make me? An accessory after the fact? Complicit in ongoing crimes that hurt real people? And what happened when, not if, but when, Jessica got caught anyway? Because people always got caught eventually. The DEA, the hospital's internal audits, suspicious patients or doctors, some mistake in the elaborate deception that would bring everything crashing down. Better that I controlled the narrative. Better that I was the one who reported it, who cooperated with authorities, who could honestly say I'd discovered the crimes and immediately taken action. Except I hadn't immediately taken action. I'd sat on this information for hours now, gathering evidence, making copies, planning my next moves. Was that delay legally significant? Could I be charged with something for not reporting it right away? I needed a lawyer, not a divorce attorney, not yet, but a criminal defense attorney who could advise me on my own legal exposure. Someone who could explain the consequences of different courses of action, who could help me navigate the impossible choice between protecting my family and doing what was right. The irony wasn't lost on me. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern had been a delayed site inspection. I'd been annoyed about the weather, about the disruption to my schedule. I'd come home early and discovered my wife's affair, and I'd thought that was the worst thing I could learn. How naive that seemed now. I stood up, my joints stiff from sitting too long, and walked quietly through the dark house. At the top of the stairs, I paused outside Emily's room, listening to her soft breathing. Then Tyler's room, where I could hear him shifting in his sleep, probably dreaming about soccer or video games or whatever occupied the mind of an 11-year-old boy whose world still made sense. Finally, I stood outside the master bedroom, the door slightly ajar. I could see Jessica's form in our bed, curled on her side, her phone charging on the nightstand within easy reach. Even in sleep, she kept it close. Even in our bed, she maintained her connection to Kevin, to Derek, to the secret life she'd built in the shadows of our marriage. I didn't go in. Instead, I went downstairs to the guest room, the one we kept made up for when Jessica's parents visited. I lay down fully clothed on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. Tomorrow, I would call in sick to work. Tomorrow, I would find a criminal defense attorney and get legal advice. Tomorrow, I would make decisions that would change everything. But for now, for these last few hours before dawn, I let myself exist in the space between knowing and acting, between discovery and consequence. The calm before the unraveling accelerated beyond my control. The guest room's darkness felt different now, not peaceful, but suffocating. I lay on top of the covers, still fully dressed, watching the digital clock on the nightstand tick through the early morning hours. 3:47 a.m., 4:03 a.m., 4:21 a.m. Somewhere in this house, my wife slept peacefully in our bed, unaware that her carefully constructed criminal enterprise had been discovered. That our marriage had ended 6 hours ago, even if she didn't know it yet. My phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. I'd turned off all notifications, unable to bear the thought of some cheerful reminder about Tyler's soccer game or Emily's orthodontist appointment intruding on this nightmare. The normalcy of our family calendar felt obscene now. At 4:47 a.m., I gave up on sleep entirely. My body ached from tension, my mind racing through endless permutations of what came next. I needed to move, to do something other than lie here, drowning in the wreckage of my life. I crept downstairs in the pre-dawn darkness, avoiding the third step that creaked. Muscle memory from years of early construction site visits, trying not to wake the family. The irony wasn't lost on me, still protecting Jessica's sleep while planning to destroy her life. Or was I? That was the question that had kept me awake all night. In the kitchen, I made coffee by the dim light over the stove, not wanting the brightness of the overhead fixtures. The familiar ritual, measuring grounds, adding water, pressing the button, felt like play acting at normalcy. Everything was the same. Nothing would ever be the same again. While the coffee brewed, I pulled out my laptop and opened a private browser window. I needed information before I called any attorney. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The DEA website was clinical and thorough. Diversion of controlled substances. Federal crime. Penalties ranging from 1 to 20 years depending on the drug schedule and quantities involved. Jessica had been stealing Schedule II substances, OxyContin, Adderall, the most serious category. The spreadsheets showed quantities that would definitely qualify as trafficking, not simple possession. I found case studies. A pharmacy technician in Ohio got 12 years for diverting pain medications. A pharmacist in Florida received 15 years plus a $250,000 fine. In both cases, their families were destroyed. Children placed with relatives while their parents served federal prison time. Emily was 13. Tyler was 11. By the time Jessica got out, they'd be adults. They'd spend their teenage years visiting their mother in a federal correctional facility. The coffee maker beeped. I poured a cup with shaking hands, the ceramic mug chattering against the pot. I searched for Derek Paulson next, the name from Jessica's files. It didn't take long to find him. His pharmacy license had been revoked in Pennsylvania 3 years ago for, I felt my stomach drop, diverting controlled substances for illegal sale. He'd served 18 months and been released on supervised probation. So he'd done this before. Been caught, served time, and immediately set up a new operation in a different state. Using Jessica as his inside source, Kevin as his courier. How had she even connected with him? How did a suburban mother and pharmacy technician end up in business with a convicted drug trafficker? I clicked through more search results. Found an address in Greensboro, about 90 minutes from Charlotte. Found a business registration for Med Supply Direct, filed 2 years ago, listing Derek as the owner. The timing fit. Jessica had started working at Presbyterian Hospital 2.5 years ago, after Tyler started middle school, and she'd decided she was ready to go back to work. Had this been her plan all along? Had she taken the job specifically to access controlled substances? I thought about her enthusiasm when she'd gotten the position. How proud she'd seemed. How I'd admired her for wanting to contribute, for not being content with just being a stay-at-home mom anymore. What kind of husband would begrudge his wife personal growth? The bitter laugh that escaped me sounded foreign in the quiet kitchen. I searched for information about hospital pharmacy security protocols. Found articles about how diversion typically worked. Falsifying records, claiming medications were damaged or wasted, creating fake patient profiles. The sophistication of Jessica's spreadsheets suggested she'd been doing all of these things. You couldn't steal that much without systematic falsification of hospital records, which meant there had to be evidence at the hospital too. Computer logs, inventory discrepancies, security footage. If I reported this to the DEA, they'd tear apart Presbyterian's pharmacy department. They'd find everything. And they'd find out how long it had been going on. How many patients had suffered because medications meant for them had been diverted to Jessica's illegal operation instead? Cancer patients denied adequate pain control. Surgery patients given saline instead of actual pain medication. The spreadsheet listed quantities, but it didn't list names. Didn't list the real people who'd paid the price for my wife's greed. I pulled up the photos I'd taken in the basement, forced myself to look at them again in the growing dawn light filtering through the kitchen windows. The empty prescription bottles, dozens of them, with names I didn't recognize. The label printer Jessica had used to create fake pharmacy labels. The postal scale for weighing medications. The vacuum sealer for packaging. The prepaid shipping labels addressed to Derek's Greensboro location. She'd set up a complete drug packaging operation in our basement. While I'd been upstairs helping Emily with algebra homework, Jessica had been downstairs running a drug trafficking enterprise. While Tyler practiced soccer in the backyard, his mother had been inside weighing out OxyContin for illegal sale. Our home, our sanctuary, the place where we'd raised our children, celebrated birthdays, decorated Christmas trees. She'd turned it into a drug distribution center. I heard movement upstairs, water running. Jessica was awake. My heart rate spiked immediately. I closed the laptop, shoved my phone in my pocket, tried to control my breathing. I wasn't ready for this. I needed more time to think, to plan, to figure out what I was going to do. But there was no more time. In a few minutes, she'd come downstairs expecting a normal Wednesday morning. Expecting me to be getting ready for work. Probably wondering why I'd slept in the guest room but not suspicious. Not yet. I had to decide. Right now. This moment. Did I confront her? Demand explanations I wasn't sure I even wanted to hear? Or did I pretend everything was normal, buy myself time to consult with an attorney, to understand my legal obligations and options? The water shut off upstairs. I heard the bathroom door open. I poured a second cup of coffee, my hands steadier now. Made the decision. I would say nothing. Not yet. I'd go to work like normal, make calls from the office, find a criminal defense attorney who could advise me confidentially. I needed to understand my own legal exposure before I made any moves. If I'd known about the drug theft and didn't report it, could I be charged as an accomplice? What were my obligations under federal law? I needed answers before I acted. The stairs creaked. Jessica appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing her robe, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired but not worried. Not guilty. Just a normal Wednesday morning. "You're up early," she said, moving toward the coffee pot. "Did you sleep okay in the guest room?" Her voice was casual, unconcerned. Like sleeping in separate rooms was a minor inconvenience, not a symptom of our marriage's death. "Fine," I managed. "Site inspection got moved up. Need to get in early." The lie came easily. Too easily. Was this how it started? How betrayal became normalized? One small lie leading to another, brick by brick, until you'd built an entire false life? Jessica poured her coffee, added cream. The same routine we'd shared for 15 years. "I have a late shift today. Won't be home until 8. A late shift? Or a drug delivery to Derek in Greensboro? I had no idea anymore what was real and what was cover story. Okay, I said. I'll handle dinner for the kids. She smiled at me. Actually smiled. You're the best. I watched her walk back upstairs, coffee in hand, completely unaware that I'd spent the night documenting evidence that would send her to federal prison. The best. Right? I waited until I heard the shower running, then grabbed my laptop and headed for the garage. I couldn't stay in that house another minute. Couldn't maintain this pretense of normalcy while my mind screamed the truth. In my truck, I pulled out my phone and started searching for criminal defense attorneys in Charlotte. Someone who specialized in federal cases. Someone who could tell me what the hell I was supposed to do now. The first law office didn't open until 9. I had 3 hours to kill. I drove to the office on autopilot, my mind elsewhere. The morning traffic was light, the sunrise painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful. The world didn't care that my life had imploded. It just kept turning. The law offices of Brennan and Associates occupied the 7th floor of a glass tower in uptown Charlotte, the kind of place where criminal defense attorneys charged $400 an hour to tell white-collar criminals how to avoid prison. I'd called at 8:47 a.m. from my car in the office parking lot, explained I needed urgent consultation about potential criminal exposure related to a family member's activities, and somehow gotten an appointment for 10:30 the same morning. The receptionist's lack of surprise at my vague, anxious explanation told me they fielded these calls regularly. I sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, watching Robert Brennan review the flash drive contents on his laptop. He was in his mid-50s, with silver hair and the kind of expensive suit that signaled competence without ostentation. I'd chosen him after 2 hours of frantic online research. Former federal prosecutor, 15 years in private practice, specialization in healthcare fraud and drug crimes. He'd been silent for 12 minutes, clicking through the spreadsheets, the text messages, the photographs of our basement-turned-drug packaging facility. His expression remained neutral, professional, giving nothing away. Finally, he closed the laptop and looked at me directly. Mr. Foster, I need to be very clear about something before we proceed. What I'm about to tell you is attorney-client privileged, but only regarding your legal exposure. If you're asking me how to help your wife avoid prosecution, that's a different conversation entirely, and not one I'm willing to have. I understand, I said. My voice sounded hollow. I need to know where I stand legally. What happens to me if I report this? Let's start with what happens if you don't report it. Brennan leaned back in his chair. North Carolina law doesn't generally impose a duty to report crimes committed by family members. You're not a mandatory reporter in your profession. However, and this is critical, the moment you became aware of ongoing criminal activity, you assumed certain risks. He ticked off points on his fingers. If you knowingly benefit from the proceeds of drug trafficking, you could be charged with money laundering. If you provide any assistance, even passive assistance like allowing your home to be used for the operation, you could face conspiracy charges. If you fail to report and the investigation eventually uncovers your knowledge, prosecutors might view that as consciousness of guilt. I haven't benefited, I said quickly. The money isn't in our joint accounts. I don't know where it is. That works in your favor, but it's not dispositive. You share a home. You file joint tax returns, I assume? I nodded. Then you've potentially benefited from reduced household expenses if she's been using illegal proceeds for groceries, utilities, her car payment. The government can make that argument. He paused. How long have you known about this? I discovered the affair Monday night. The drug operation early Tuesday morning, around 2 a.m. It's now Wednesday. Less than 48 hours, Brennan made a note. That's good. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to claim you were processing the information, consulting counsel, determining your obligations. If you'd waited a week, 2 weeks, that delay starts to look like complicity. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs. What about my children? If I report their mother to the DEA, your children will suffer regardless of what you do, Brennan said, not unkindly. I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. If you report her now, she faces federal charges, likely prison time. If you don't report her, and she's eventually caught, and Mr. Foster, she will be caught, then she faces those same charges plus your family faces potential asset forfeiture, and you may face charges yourself. He pulled up one of the spreadsheets on his screen. Your wife has been stealing controlled substances from a hospital pharmacy for at least 6 months, probably longer. She's created a paper trail, these spreadsheets, these text messages. She's working with a convicted felon who's already on law enforcement's radar. She's shipping drugs through the U.S. Postal Service, which adds federal mail fraud to the list of charges. This operation has a limited shelf life. How limited? Impossible to say. Could be tomorrow, could be 6 months. But pharmaceutical theft at this scale doesn't go unnoticed indefinitely. The hospital's inventory systems will flag the discrepancies. The DEA monitors controlled substance distribution patterns. One customer complaint, one intercepted package, one suspicious postal worker. Any of those triggers an investigation that leads straight back to your wife. I thought about Jessica this morning, kissing me goodbye before she left for her shift at the hospital, reminding me that Tyler had soccer practice at 4, asking if I wanted salmon or chicken for dinner, playing the role of devoted wife and mother while planning to steal medications from cancer patients and sell them to addicts. What do you recommend I do? Brennan was quiet for a moment. I can't tell you what to do. I can only explain your options and their likely consequences. Then explain them. Option 1. You report everything to the DEA immediately. You provide the evidence you've gathered. You cooperate fully with their investigation. In this scenario, you're a witness, not a suspect. You discovered criminal activity and reported it promptly. Your children lose their mother to federal prison, but you maintain your freedom and your ability to care for them. He held up a second finger. Option 2. You confront your wife, tell her you know everything, demand she stop immediately and turn herself in. This is legally risky because it gives her time to destroy evidence, flee, or pull you deeper into the conspiracy by asking you to help her. It also doesn't address the harm she's already caused. Patients who didn't receive their medications, addicts who may have overdosed on pills she diverted. Option 3. You do nothing. You pretend you never saw any of this. You wait and hope she doesn't get caught, or that when she does, you can credibly claim ignorance. He shook his head. I don't recommend this option. The evidence is on your home computer, in your basement, in your shared residence. I didn't know becomes a very hard sell when there's a drug packaging operation in your basement. I stared at the floor, at the expensive carpet that probably cost more per square foot than the medications Jessica had stolen. If I report her, what happens to her? Federal drug trafficking charges. The penalties depend on the quantities involved and her criminal history. First offense, cooperation with investigators. She's looking at a minimum of several years in federal prison. If they can prove she knew patients were being harmed, if anyone overdosed on diverted medications, The charges and sentences escalate significantly. And the hospital will face its own investigation. The DEA will want to know how a pharmacy technician was able to steal controlled substances for months without detection. There will be regulatory violations, potential criminal charges for supervisors who failed in their oversight duties, civil lawsuits from patients who suffered. It'll be a disaster for Presbyterian. Brennan leaned forward. Mr. Foster, I need you to understand something. Your wife isn't just cheating on you. She isn't just stealing from her employer. She's diverting medications from patients who need them. Cancer patients, post-surgical patients, people in genuine pain. She's selling controlled substances that may end up killing someone. Every day this continues, more people are harmed. I knew that. I'd known it since I saw those spreadsheets, since I read the text messages about shipments and customers, but hearing it stated so plainly, so clinically, made it impossible to hide behind any remaining illusions. How much time do I have to decide? Legally? You should report this today. Every hour you delay increases your risk. He paused. Practically? You have until she commits the next theft, ships the next package, makes the next sale. Whenever that is, your knowledge of ongoing criminal activity becomes harder to explain away. I stood up, my legs unsteady. Thank you for your time. Mr. Foster. Brennan stood as well. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've seen a lot of people in your position. Good people who discovered that someone they loved was doing terrible things. The ones who waited, who tried to protect their loved ones by staying silent, almost always regretted it. The consequences just got worse. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. If you decide to report this, call me first. I'll help you navigate the process, make sure you're protected. If you decide not to report it, he paused. Then you should probably find a different attorney because you'll need a criminal defense lawyer, not just someone to advise you on your exposure. I sat in my car in the parking garage beneath Brennan's office building for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. The engine was off. The concrete walls seemed to close in around me, the fluorescent lights overhead humming their indifferent tune. 3 options. None of them good. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Jessica wondering where I was. I'd told her I had a late meeting with a contractor. Another lie added to the architecture of deception we'd built between us, though hers had far more elaborate foundations. I pulled out the phone. Not Jessica. A text from my daughter Emily. Dad, can you pick up pizza on the way home? Mom has to work late. Of course she did. Wednesday evening, I checked the calendar app on my phone, scrolling back through previous weeks. Every Wednesday for the past 3 months, Jessica had worked evening shifts. I'd never questioned it, never thought to verify. What kind of civil engineer doesn't verify the load-bearing assumptions in his own life? I typed back, "Sure, sweetie. Usual order?" Her response came immediately. "Yes. Extra cheese. Tyler says thanks." My children. Emily with her braces and her careful way of organizing her homework. Tyler with his soccer cleats, perpetually muddy by the back door. They were eating pizza, doing homework, living their normal Wednesday evening, completely unaware that their mother was a federal drug trafficker. I started the car. The drive home took 35 minutes through Charlotte's evening traffic. I stopped at Marco's Pizza, our usual place, where the kid behind the counter knew our order without asking. Large pepperoni with extra cheese, breadsticks, the works. Normal Wednesday routine in a life that had become anything but normal. When I pulled into our driveway at 6:47 p.m., Jessica's car was gone, working late. The phrase took on new dimensions now. Was she actually at the hospital or meeting Derek Paulson? Making another delivery with Kevin? The possibilities multiplied like fractures spreading through glass. Emily opened the door before I could get my key out. "You're a lifesaver, Dad. I'm starving." "When isn't your brother starving?" I managed a smile, carrying the pizza boxes inside. Tyler was already at the kitchen table, math homework spread out in front of him. "Dad, can you help me with number 12? I don't get this word problem." I set the pizza down and looked at the worksheet. A train leaving Chicago, another leaving New York. When would they meet? Simple algebra. Variables and equations. If only my own problems could be solved with such clean mathematics. "Let's eat first," I said. "Then we'll tackle the trains." We sat around the kitchen table, the same granite countertop where I'd found Jessica's laptop 2 days ago. Emily talked about her English class, how they were reading To Kill a Mockingbird and discussing themes of justice and morality. The irony wasn't lost on me. "What do you think makes someone do the wrong thing?" Emily asked, picking pepperoni off her slice. "Like, in the book, people know what's right, but they do wrong things anyway." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Can we not do homework during dinner?" But I looked at my daughter, 13 years old, braces glinting in the kitchen light, asking questions that cut too close to the bone. "Sometimes people convince themselves they have good reasons," I said carefully. "Or they don't think they'll get caught. Or they just stop thinking about anyone except themselves." Emily nodded, thoughtful. "Mrs. Patterson says that's what makes Atticus a hero. He does the right thing even when it's hard." "Your teacher sounds smart." We finished eating. I helped Tyler with his math. Trains meeting in Cleveland after 2 hours and 43 minutes. Emily retreated upstairs to finish her reading. I cleaned up the pizza boxes, wiped down the counters, loaded the dishwasher. Normal Wednesday tasks in our normal Wednesday life. Except I kept glancing at the basement door. At 8:15 p.m. my phone rang. Jessica. "Hey, honey." Her voice was cheerful, familiar. "Just wanted to let you know I'm grabbing dinner with some of the girls from work. Stephanie's birthday. I'll be home by 10. Stephanie. I'd met her once at a hospital fundraiser 2 years ago. Tall, blonde, worked in radiology. Was she real? Was this dinner real? Or was Jessica with Derek Paulson right now, counting pills, packaging shipments, dividing up the profits from stolen medications? "Sure," I said. "Have fun." "Did you get the kids dinner?" "Pizza. They're good." "You're the best. Love you." The words hung in the air between us, transmitted through cellular towers and satellites, traveling at the speed of light but carrying the weight of 15 years. "Love you too," I said, because what else could I say? After she hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long moment. Then I walked to the basement door and opened it. I'd been down here twice since Tuesday's discovery, once in shock, once to photograph everything for evidence. Now I descended the stairs with a different purpose. I needed to understand the scope of what Jessica had built. The shipping station was exactly as I'd left it. Thermal printer, label rolls, padded envelopes in 3 sizes stacked in neat columns. The laptop, password protected I'd already tried, sat closed on the makeshift desk. A filing cabinet in the corner that I hadn't opened yet. I pulled on the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. Jessica was many things, but careless wasn't one of them. I went back upstairs to the junk drawer in the kitchen where we kept spare keys, rubber bands, batteries, the accumulated detritus of domestic life. No filing cabinet key. Where would Jessica hide a key she needed regular access to but didn't want anyone finding? I thought about her patterns, her habits. She was organized, systematic. The key would be somewhere logical but not obvious. Not in her purse. Too risky if I ever needed something from it. Not in her car. Somewhere in the house, somewhere she accessed regularly, but I didn't. Her bathroom. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, entered the master bath. Jessica's side of the double vanity was covered with products, moisturizers, serums, makeup brushes in a ceramic holder. I opened drawers methodically. Hair ties, cotton balls, nail polish in a rainbow of colors I couldn't name. The third drawer down, beneath a tray of lipsticks, I found a small magnetic key holder, the kind people stick under their car bumpers. Inside, a single brass key. Back in the basement, the key turned smoothly in the filing cabinet lock. The top drawer contained ledgers, actual physical ledgers, the kind accountants used before computers, with columns for dates, items, quantities, and amounts. Jessica's handwriting filled page after page in neat, precise rows. I pulled out the most recent ledger and sat down at her desk, hands trembling slightly as I opened it. The entries went back 8 months, not 6. 8 months of theft, documented with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that would have made her an excellent project manager. Each line showed a date, a medication name, a quantity, and a sale price. May 3rd, OxyContin 80 120 tablets, $2,400, May 7th. Percocet, Tim, 200 tablets, $2,000, May 11th. Adderall 30, 150 tablets, 1,500. The amounts were staggering. I flipped through pages, watching the numbers climb. June showed increased volume, July even more. By August, Jessica was moving product worth $15,000 to $20,000 per week. I did the math quickly in my head. 8 months, average $15,000 per week, roughly 4 weeks per month. Not $40,000. Closer to $480,000. My vision blurred. I had to read the numbers again to make sure I hadn't miscalculated. $480,000. Where was it? What was she planning to do with nearly $500,000 in drug money? The second drawer contained bank statements for accounts I'd never seen. 3 different banks, all in Jessica's name only. The balances made my stomach drop. First National, $127,438.92. Piedmont Savings, $156,221.47. Carolina. Trust, $184,177.33. Total, $4,772. She'd kept it, all of it. Sitting in bank accounts, earning interest, waiting for, what? The bottom drawer held passports. I pulled them out with shaking hands. 2 U.S. passports, one for Jessica, one for someone named Jennifer Walsh. The photos were identical. Jessica's face stared back at me from both documents. Beneath the passports, a folder containing birth certificates, social security cards, driver's licenses. All for Jennifer Walsh, all with Jessica's information, her photo, but a different name, a different identity. And underneath everything else, 2 more passports. Child passports. Emily and Tyler. Except the names read Emma Walsh and Thomas Walsh. My children. New identities. Ready to go. I sat in the basement, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's double life, holding passports that proved she'd been planning to disappear. To take our children and vanish into a new life built on stolen medications and patient suffering. The choice Robert Brennan had outlined suddenly became very clear. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the business card he'd given me. DEA tip line, a voice answered. How may I help you? I hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of my car, parked 3 blocks from my own house. The streetlight above cast everything in sodium yellow, making the suburban landscape look alien and unfamiliar. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The DEA agent had been professional, almost bored-sounding at first. Then I'd mentioned Presbyterian Hospital, controlled substances, and an illegal online pharmacy operation. The tone changed immediately. He'd asked me to repeat the details twice, taking notes. When I mentioned the fake passports, there was a long pause before he asked if I could secure the evidence and keep it safe until agents could arrive. When? I'd asked. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Can you be available? I'd said yes. What else could I say? Now I had to go home. Back to the house where my wife, my criminal wife, my wife who planned to kidnap our children and disappear, was probably making dinner, helping Tyler with homework, living her double life as if everything was normal. The drive home took 4 minutes. I sat in the driveway for another 10, trying to compose my face into something resembling normalcy. Through the kitchen window, I could see Jessica moving around, her silhouette backlit by the overhead lights we'd chosen together during the renovation 3 years ago. I got out of the car. The garage door opener sounded impossibly loud. I walked through the mudroom, past Tyler's soccer cleats and Emily's backpack, and into the kitchen. Jessica turned from the stove, wooden spoon in hand. "Hey, you're later than I expected. Traffic?" She looked so normal. Jeans and a fitted sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No visible signs of criminality, no scarlet letter marking her as a thief and drug trafficker. "Yeah," I managed. "Accident on 77. "Well, dinner's almost ready. Chicken stir-fry. Can you get the kids?" I nodded and headed upstairs, grateful for the reprieve. Emily was in her room, headphones on, bent over her laptop. Tyler was building something with Legos, pieces scattered across his floor like shrapnel. "Dinner," I told them both. At the table, we went through the motions of family dinner. Jessica asked about everyone's day. Emily complained about a group project in science class. Tyler talked about soccer practice, about how Coach Williams said he was improving on corner kicks. Jessica listened, engaged, asked follow-up questions. I pushed food around my plate and tried not to stare at her. How did she do it? How did she sit here, asking our son about his footwork, when she'd been planning to steal him away under a fake name? When she'd been diverting medications from cancer patients, from people in chronic pain, from children with ADHD who needed their prescriptions? "Daniel, you okay?" I looked up. Jessica was watching me, a small crease between her eyebrows. Concerned. The devoted wife, worried about her husband. "Fine, just tired." "You've seemed stressed lately. Maybe you should take a day off, decompress a little." The irony was so thick I could taste it. I was stressed. My wife was running a drug trafficking operation and planning to flee the country with our children, and I was stressed. "Maybe," I said. After dinner, Jessica loaded the dishwasher while I helped Tyler finish his math homework. Emily disappeared back to her room. The evening unfolded like 1,000 other evenings, mundane, domestic, utterly ordinary on the surface. At 10:30, Jessica came upstairs. I was in bed, laptop open, pretending to review project specifications. She went through her nighttime routine in the bathroom, then slid under the covers beside me. "I'm going to read for a bit," she said, reaching for the thriller on her nightstand. I stared at my screen, seeing nothing. Beside me, the woman I'd loved for 17 years turned pages, completely unaware that I'd just destroyed her life. That federal agents would be arriving in less than 11 hours. That everything she'd built, the illegal operation, the escape plan, the hidden money, was about to come crashing down. She fell asleep around 11:15. I knew because her breathing changed, deepening into the familiar rhythm I'd listened to for 15 years of marriage. I didn't sleep at all. Instead, I lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathe, and thought about the children sleeping down the hall. Emily with her orthodontic headgear and her anxiety about group projects. Tyler with his Legos and his improving corner kicks. In less than 12 hours, their mother would be arrested. Federal agents would come to our house. Their lives would explode into chaos and confusion and pain. And I was the one who'd lit the fuse. Robert Brennan had said I had no choice, that doing nothing made me complicit. He was right. I knew he was right. But lying there in the dark, listening to my wife sleep, I felt like I was betraying everyone I loved. At 3 a.m., I got up and went downstairs. Made coffee I didn't drink. Sat at the kitchen table and watched the digital clock on the microwave count down the minutes. At 5:30, Jessica's alarm went off upstairs. I heard the shower start. Heard her moving around getting ready for work. For her shift at the hospital pharmacy, where she'd been systematically stealing controlled substances for 8 months. She came downstairs at 6:15, dressed in scrubs, her hair still damp. "You're up early," she said, pouring herself coffee. "Couldn't sleep." She sat down across from me, wrapping her hands around her mug. For a moment, we just looked at each other across the kitchen table. "Daniel, what's going on?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "What do you mean?" "You've been acting strange, distant. Is it work? Is it us?" Us. The word hung in the air between us. There was no us anymore. There was a criminal and her unknowing accomplice. There was a woman planning to kidnap their children and a man about to have her arrested. "I'm fine," I said. She studied me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Suspicion? Calculation? Then it was gone, replaced by concern. "Okay, but if you need to talk, I'm here." She finished her coffee, kissed me on the forehead, and left for work. I sat at the table and watched through the window as she backed out of the driveway. Her car disappeared down the street, heading toward Presbyterian Hospital, where she'd clock in and spend her shift doing legitimate work mixed with criminal enterprise, and she had no idea it was her last day of freedom. The kids got up at 7. I made them breakfast, packed their lunches, drove them to school. Emily asked if I was okay. Tyler chattered about a field trip next week. I went through the motions, my mind counting down the minutes until 9 a.m. At 8:45, I was back home, sitting in the living room, waiting. At 8:53, a dark sedan pulled up in front of the house. At 8:54, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find 2 people on my front porch. The man was tall, mid-40s, with graying hair and a weather-beaten face. The woman was younger, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything about me in an instant. Both wore suits and serious expressions. The man held up a badge. "Mr. Foster, I'm Special Agent David Walsh, DEA. This is Special Agent Lisa Grant. We spoke on the phone yesterday evening." I stepped back, letting them inside. "Come in." They entered my living room, and I closed the door behind them, sealing all of our fates. The 2 agents stood in my foyer with the kind of practiced stillness that comes from years of dealing with people in crisis. Special Agent Walsh, mid-40s, graying at the temples, wearing a navy suit that had seen better days, gestured toward the living room. "Mr. Foster, is there somewhere we can sit down? This conversation will take some time." I led them to the dining room instead. The living room felt too casual, too much like the space where my family had spent countless evenings together. The dining room table, solid oak, a 10th anniversary gift from Jessica's parents, seemed more appropriate for what was about to happen. Special Agent Grant pulled out a leather portfolio and a digital recorder. She was younger than Walsh, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that cataloged everything in the room. Before we begin, I want to clarify your legal position. You're not under investigation at this time. You contacted us voluntarily to report suspected criminal activity. However, anything you tell us can be used in any subsequent proceedings. Do you understand? I do. Do you wish to have an attorney present? I thought of Robert Brennan's card, still in my wallet. No, I want to tell you everything. Walsh nodded. Let's start from the beginning. When did you first become aware of your wife's activities at Presbyterian Hospital? Yesterday, Tuesday, September 24th. I came home early from work and found evidence of an affair on her laptop. While I was looking through her things, I discovered the pharmaceutical theft. Grant's pen moved across her notepad. Walk us through exactly what you found and where. I described the discovery methodically, the way I'd approach a project review at work. The messages on the laptop, the bank statements in the bedroom drawer, the basement safe with the drugs, the ledger, the fake passports. Both agents listened without interrupting, though Grant's eyebrows rose when I mentioned the passports. You said fake passports, Walsh said. How do you know they're fake? They have our children's photos but different names. Emma and Thomas Walsh, and one for Jessica as Jennifer Walsh. Something flickered across Walsh's face. Walsh? Yes. He exchanged a glance with Grant. That's interesting. We'll come back to that. These passports, Canadian, you said? Yes, they looked professional. Not something you'd make with a printer and laminator. Grant made another note. We'll need to see everything you found. The ledger, the bank statements, the passports. But first, tell us about your wife's work history at Presbyterian. I explained what I knew. Jessica had started at the hospital pharmacy 3 years ago, initially part-time, then full-time about 18 months back. She'd worked in retail pharmacy before the kids were born, so she had experience, though she wasn't a licensed pharmacist, just a technician. Did she ever mention anyone named Derek Paulson? Walsh asked. No, I only know that name from the ledger. She never talked about him. What about Kevin Wright? My jaw tightened. The personal trainer, the man she's been sleeping with. I know he was involved in the distribution somehow. The ledger showed payments to KW for deliveries. Walsh leaned back in his chair. Mr. Foster, I'm going to be direct with you. We've had Derek Paulson under surveillance for 7 months. We know he's running an illegal online pharmacy operation, selling controlled substances without valid prescriptions. What we haven't been able to determine is his supply chain. We knew he had someone inside a hospital pharmacy, but we couldn't identify who. The room felt suddenly smaller. You've been investigating this for 7 months? Since February, Grant confirmed. We had a tip from a patient who received medications that didn't match what her doctor prescribed. The investigation led us to Paulson, but he's careful. Very careful. Uses multiple layers of insulation between himself and his suppliers. So, Jessica, your wife may have been one of several suppliers, Walsh said, but based on what you're telling us about the volume, nearly $500,000 over 8 months, she was likely his primary source. I felt sick. How many people were affected? How many patients didn't get their medications because she was stealing them? Grant's expression softened slightly. We won't know until we audit the pharmacy's inventory and records. But Mr. Foster, you need to understand something. The medications your wife was diverting, OxyContin, Percocet, Xanax, Adderall. These are Schedule II and Schedule III controlled substances. The federal penalties for trafficking in these drugs are severe. We're talking minimum mandatory sentences. I understand. I'm not sure you do, Walsh said, not unkindly. Your wife is looking at 10 to 20 years in federal prison. Possibly more, depending on what we find during the investigation. If anyone died from medications purchased through Paulson's operation, overdoses, adverse reactions, anything, she could face manslaughter charges. The words hung in the air like smoke. 20 years. Emily would be 33. Tyler would be 31. Their mother would be nearly 60 when she got out. If she got out. What happens now? I asked. Now we need to see the evidence, Grant said. After that, we'll coordinate with the FBI. They have jurisdiction over the identity fraud aspects, and with the local police. We'll need to interview your wife, probably this afternoon. She's at work, at the hospital. Walsh checked his watch. We'll send agents to pick her up there. It's better that way. We can secure the pharmacy and begin the audit immediately. We'll also need to bring in Derek Paulson and Kevin Wright. I thought of Jessica at Presbyterian, going through her morning routine, sorting medications, chatting with coworkers, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. Part of me, a small, vindictive part I wasn't proud of, wanted to be there to see her face when the agents arrived. But mostly I just felt exhausted. Your children, Grant said. Where are they right now? School. Emily's at Charlotte Country Day. Tyler's at the middle school campus. You'll need to pick them up before this becomes public. Once we arrest your wife, the media will be all over this. Hospital pharmacy theft, illegal drug sales. It's going to be a major story. I hadn't thought about that. Of course it would be news. The local stations would run it on the evening broadcast. The Observer would put it on the front page. Everyone would know. Emily's classmates, Tyler's soccer team, my colleagues at the firm. Everyone would know that my wife was a drug dealer. Mr. Foster, Walsh's voice pulled me back. Are you all right? No, I said honestly, but I'll manage. Let me show you the evidence. I led them downstairs to the basement. The safe was still open, exactly as I'd left it the night before. Grant photographed everything with her phone before carefully removing items and placing them in evidence bags. The ledger, the passports, the remaining pills in their bottles, the bundles of cash. We'll need the bank statements too, she said, and access to the laptop where you found the initial messages. It's upstairs. I'll get it. When I returned with Jessica's laptop and the bank statements, Walsh was examining one of the fake passports under a small magnifying glass. These are good, he said. Really good. Not the kind of thing you can buy on the dark web for a few $100s. Whoever made these had access to proper equipment and security features. The FBI's document analysis team will want to look at these closely. Why would she need them? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Exit strategy, Grant said. When you're committing federal crimes, you plan for the possibility of getting caught. She was preparing to run, take the kids and disappear into Canada probably. With $500,000, she could have started over somewhere. Without me. The thought crystallized with painful clarity. Jessica hadn't just been stealing drugs and having an affair. She'd been planning to erase our entire life together, to take our children and vanish, leaving me with nothing but questions and an empty house. Walsh closed the safe. We'll need to take this entire unit for processing. There may be fingerprints, DNA evidence. We'll also need to search the rest of your house with your permission. Is there anything else we should know about? Any other locations where your wife might have stored drugs or money? Not that I know of, but I didn't know about any of this until yesterday. Fair enough. He stood, brushing dust from his knees. Mr. Foster, I want you to understand what's going to happen over the next few hours. We're going to take this evidence and brief our team. Then we're going to execute arrest warrants for Jessica Foster, Derek Paulson, and Kevin Wright. We'll search your wife's workplace, Paulson's residence and business locations, and Wright's home. This is going to be a multi-agency operation involving the DEA, FBI, local police, and the hospital's security team. When? This afternoon, probably around 2 or 3 o'clock. I'd recommend you pick up your children from school before then. I checked my phone. 9:47 a.m. Less than 5 hours until my children's lives changed forever. I picked up the kids at 1:30, telling the school office there was a family emergency. Emily knew something was wrong the moment she saw me. I could see it in the way her eyes narrowed, the way she clutched her backpack a little tighter. Tyler was oblivious, chattering about a substitute teacher who'd let them watch a documentary about space. We were home by 2:15. I'd just gotten them settled with snacks when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Subject in custody. Clean arrest. We'll contact you later. Walsh. Jessica had been arrested. I turned on the TV, flipping to the local news. Nothing yet. It would take time for the media to pick up the story, for the press releases to go out, for reporters to descend on Presbyterian Hospital with their cameras and microphones. Dad? Emily stood in the doorway, her expression worried. What's going on? Why did you pick us up early? I looked at my daughter, 13 years old, braces catching the afternoon light, still young enough to believe her parents were infallible, but old enough to sense when that illusion was cracking. Sit down, both of you. We need to talk. The conversation that followed was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder than discovering the affair, harder than reporting Jessica to the DEA, harder than watching the agents carry evidence boxes out of our basement. I had to tell my children that their mother was a criminal, that she'd been arrested, that she wouldn't be coming home. Emily cried. Tyler didn't understand at first, kept asking questions that had no good answers. Why would Mom steal medicine? Where is she now? When is she coming back? I held them both while they processed the impossible, feeling my own heart break with every sob, every confused question. This was the collateral damage Robert Brennan had warned me about. This was the price of doing the right thing. The media storm hit around 5 o'clock. My phone started ringing. Reporters, colleagues, neighbors who'd seen the news. I turned it off. We ordered pizza again, though none of us ate much. I let the kids watch movies until late, grateful for any distraction from the nightmare our life had become. That night, after they'd finally fallen asleep, I sat alone in the living room and let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. My marriage was over. My wife was in federal custody. My children were traumatized. And tomorrow, I'd have to figure out how to keep functioning, how to be both parents, how to rebuild some semblance of normal life from the wreckage. The trial took 18 months to reach court. Jessica pleaded not guilty initially, but the evidence was overwhelming. The ledgers, the bank accounts, the fake passports, the testimony from hospital staff who'd noticed inventory discrepancies but hadn't reported them. Derek Paulson tried to claim Jessica was the mastermind, that he'd been coerced. Kevin Wright turned state's evidence, testifying against both of them in exchange for a reduced sentence. In the end, Jessica took a plea deal. 15 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 10. Derek got 23 years. Kevin got 5. I attended the sentencing hearing, sitting in the back of the courtroom while the judge detailed the scope of the harm Jessica had caused. 47 patients had been identified who'd received inadequate pain medication because their prescriptions had been diverted. 3 had filed civil lawsuits against the hospital. 1 elderly cancer patient had suffered unnecessarily during her final months because the OxyContin prescribed for her had been stolen and sold to addicts. Jessica cried when that detail was read into the record. I felt nothing. The judge spoke about the betrayal of trust, about the particular cruelty of stealing from the sick and vulnerable, about the damage to the medical profession's reputation. Then she handed down the sentence, and Jessica was led away in handcuffs. I didn't visit her in prison. She wrote letters at first, long, rambling apologies mixed with explanations and justifications. The affair had made her feel alive again. The money had seemed like security, a way to protect herself and the kids if our marriage fell apart. She'd never meant for anyone to get hurt. I stopped reading after the 3rd letter. Emily struggled the most in the aftermath. She withdrew from her friends, her grades slipped, and she developed anxiety that required therapy. Tyler was younger, more resilient, but he had nightmares and asked questions I couldn't answer. Why had Mom done it? Didn't she love us? I sold the house. Too many memories, too much media attention from neighbors who'd seen the news coverage. We moved to a smaller place across town, started fresh. I cut back my hours at work, prioritized being present for the kids. We found a good therapist who specialized in family trauma. Slowly, painfully, we began to heal. Jessica's parents blamed me for reporting her. They stopped speaking to me entirely, though they maintained contact with the kids through supervised video calls. My own parents were supportive but baffled. How had I not known? How had I missed the signs? I asked myself the same questions for months. The answer, I eventually realized, was that I'd trusted completely. I'd believed in the sanctuary of marriage, in the promises we'd made, in the life we'd built together. I'd never thought to verify because verification implied doubt, and doubt seemed like a betrayal of everything marriage was supposed to be. But trust without verification isn't trust. It's willful blindness. 3 years after Jessica's arrest, I sat in the bleachers watching Tyler's high school soccer game. He was 14 now, taller than me, with a wicked corner kick that made his coach beam with pride. Emily was 16, doing better. She'd found a group of friends who accepted her, who didn't define her by her mother's crimes. She wanted to study social work in college to help people who'd made mistakes find their way back. I'd started dating someone, a woman named Rachel who worked in hospital administration, ironically enough. She knew my history, knew about Jessica and the trial and the aftermath. She didn't judge. She just accepted that everyone carried scars, that the question wasn't whether you'd been damaged, but how you chose to heal. Tyler scored a goal, and I jumped to my feet cheering. He looked up at the stands, found me, and grinned. In that moment, I saw the boy he'd been and the man he was becoming. Resilient, hopeful, unbroken despite everything. That night, after I dropped the kids at their respective activities, I drove past our old house. The new owners had painted it a different color, updated the landscaping. It looked nothing like the place where I discovered my wife's betrayal, where federal agents had carried out evidence boxes, where my old life had ended. I didn't feel anger anymore. Didn't feel much of anything except a distant sadness for what might have been if Jessica had made different choices, if she'd valued what we had instead of destroying it for money and excitement and whatever else had driven her to steal from cancer patients. But mostly I felt grateful. Grateful that I'd found out when I did, before she disappeared with the kids. Grateful that I'd had the courage to report it, even knowing the consequences. Grateful that Emily and Tyler were resilient enough to survive and eventually thrive. The moral of this story isn't complicated. Trust is essential, but so is accountability. Love doesn't mean closing your eyes to wrongdoing. Family doesn't mean protecting criminals at the expense of their victims. And sometimes, the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. I destroyed my marriage to save my children and do justice for the patients Jessica had harmed. Given the choice again, knowing everything that followed, the pain, the trauma, the years of rebuilding, I'd make the same decision. Because some sanctuaries are built on lies, and they need to fall before anything real can take their place. Jessica would be eligible for parole in 7 more years. The kids would be adults by then, living their own lives, carrying their scars but not defined by them. Whether they chose to have a relationship with their mother after her release was their decision to make. As for me, I'd learned that the foundation of any relationship, marriage, family, friendship, isn't just love or commitment or shared history. It's integrity. It's the courage to face hard truths and make harder choices. It's understanding that sometimes you have to tear down everything you've built to create space for something honest. I drove home to the life I'd rebuilt from the ruins, to my children who were learning to trust again, to the possibility that the future could be better than the past. The unraveling had been painful, but necessary. And on the other side of it, we'd found something I'd never had in my marriage to Jessica: the solid ground of truth. That, I'd learned, was the only foundation worth building on.